Hi.
Welcome to Hello and welcome to Oz Chat, Renee. How are you?
I'm good, Anna. Thanks for having me.
Hi. That's a bit funny because you see, I'm not normally very formal with anyone, and now that I'm doing these hellos after I've started, which
Don't know
I
what
have
to
to
where to
start
go
doing.
next.
You are an author illustrator.
Yes.
And look at your work behind you. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Oh,
So is
thank
that
you.
Sherlock Bones?
Right there. Yeah, Sherlock Bones. Yeah. Yeah, it's really exciting. My son saw it and he's like, the book is here. The book is here. I'm like, no, it's not out yet.
You tricked him.
Just,
Oh no.
only just went to print.
Oh.
But yeah, that's the new baby.
So Sherlock Bones. Tell me.
Sherlock Bones is a tawny frogmouth skeleton. So you're in New South Wales, is that right?
I'm in Brisbane, Queensland.
Oh, okay. So the Queensland Museum. So I have a picture that I pulled out. This is Sherlock Bones is actually in the Queensland Museum. And I know there's a little bit of a glare, and this is actually in repair in the back of someone's office. They let me come in and look at it the last time I was in Brisbane. Even there's a cigarette in the background and a real phone. I don't know maybe that's being saved for a future exhibit, a phone with a wire attached to it and stuff. But
Wow.
yeah, so this is an exhibit at the Queensland Museum, and I used to live in Queensland. And when I first saw that, all I was doing is illustrating. I wasn't, and just really kind of creating artwork and exhibiting. Writing wasn't really on my radar, but I fell in love with that frogmouth skeleton.
That is gorgeous skeleton.
Isn't it?
I'm not a skeleton fan, but that's a gorgeous skeleton.
And they're so funny. Like, they've got them posed and they're all in these funny paces and making faces, and they look like they're laughing. Like they're just, I love them. And if you actually do a image search on Google and search for Queensland Museum frogmouth skeletons, obviously I'm not the only person who really likes them, because you'll get quite a few people have photographed them and put them up, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's a thing.
I didn't know, and it's right here, like down the road.
But it's in repair. I went and I must have been in Queensland a year ago, and it was off display and being repaired. And they weren't really sure if or when it would go back out.
But that's really cool.
Yeah, I love it.
And we get the real ones, like the actual, not dead ones.
Yeah, no, when we lived in Queensland, we saw them all the time. Like, we used to go, before we had a child, we used to go walking at night, and we were new to the country, so we were just out looking for frogmouths and possums and stuff, and we'd see every night we'd see 3 or 4. We couldn't tell if it was the same one following us around or if there were that many frogmouths in our little suburb, but yeah, we loved it.
I don't know enough about them in terms of their intelligence and everything. I know more about the cockatoos and things, but in terms of, because I know, like, the corvus birds, they do actually know people. They'll know your face. They know.
Maggies,
like, I never get swooped. I never get, because they in the same space and someone else can walk in, and if they are particularly, there are certain kids who just like the thrill of being pecked on the head, and so they would deliberately race down a hill screaming on their bike, waiting for the magpie to come and swoop them. But they weren't going anywhere, because they'd get off their bike and walk back up and try again.
Oh,
so the magpies knew them. Yeah,
I always get swooped, and I love them. The first time I got swooped, I had taken my camera. Again, we had just moved to Australia, and I took my camera because I wanted to draw pictures of magpies, because I found them fascinating. And I'm at the park and I'm taking photos, and there's this notorious one. Like, he's definitely a really aggressive male, and I didn't know that he's in the grass. I started taking photos with my camera, because back then I probably even had a digital camera, and he just attacked me. I mean, he just and ever since then I couldn't. And you had to go through that park if you went anywhere on your bike. You always were through the park. And he forever chased me. I tried everything, umbrellas. Like, I'd walk through the park under an umbrella. Like, I just try to hide from him. He would follow me out of the park in about a block down the road, chasing me. And I would take it so personally, because I was like, I love birds. Like, what are you doing? Like, I draw birds.
Did you try feeding him? No, bird people can comment and tell me off for saying that, because this is just like, I'm just guessing here.
I learned that later. I walked through the park one day, and that magpie was hanging out on the picnic table with a couple of tradies. And he was totally cool as a cucumber, and they were feeding him. And I thought, okay, that's a trick. But I never said that one, but there is one in my neighborhood. He started swooping me. I must have some threatening. I
used to when I was a kid. Like
thing.
The idea was that it was the red hair, or there was one time when I had like an orange stack hat. Like a helmet.
Yeah.
They're the really big ones. This
Yeah.
is when they weren't cool. They're now cool, but back then they were not cool. And mine was even less cool because it was orange. Why I had an orange stack hat, I have no idea. And I was always pecked, but the shine, we thought maybe the light, like the sun would reflect off it, looked like, I don't know. I was attacked a lot as a kid, but never once. I don't move very fast. I wonder if I'm not much of a target because I'm so slow.
I don't know what they find me everywhere. But now I talk to them, so if I see them and I feel like they're getting you can come tell when they're getting aggressive, and I get like the neighbors must think I'm crazy, but I get in this like, hi Maggie, how are you? Nice, oh nice, and they will settle. And then I did also bring in a little bit of dry dog food in my pocket. And I drop it. And I don't know if they eat it, but they're definitely like, oh, what was that? And then when I leave, they go and check it out. So even if they don't eat it, I feel like they distract. And I don't leave alone. I mean, I'm environmental background. I'm very conscious about whether or not it's appropriate to feed birds. And I know there's a lot of mixed reviews on that. But I think to keep the bird calm, I'm actually protecting the bird by letting him save that aggressive energy for a snake or an actual dog that's going to cause him harm, not me.
Yeah.
But we used to live, when we lived in Brisbane, we lived in Urunga. So we were really close to the river, and there were a lot of butcher birds in our area. And we were in this like apartment that had big wisteria out in front. But the butcher birds would bring little like anoles or geckos that they caught, and they'd put them on a nail. There was like this nail sticking out of one of the windows that we couldn't open, and they would just impale it on the nail because they leave it there and come back later. So you could look out the window and there would just be this, dead lizard hanging from a little nail. I mean, it is, but it's also like it's kind of cool.
It's like your cat bringing you a mouse, and it's like, yay, look what I did.
They would come back and eat it. It wasn't really left for us. I think they probably knew we couldn't get it, but it was a little bizarre at first because we thought, why are these? They're not, obviously these lizards aren't throwing themselves onto this random nail that sticks out of the window pane, but I know.
Let me in.
I've had enough.
Sacrificed geckos. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm a little bit wary.
No, I love them. No, they're so nice.
Yep. Yeah, I've totally, see, that's how far we got into saying about your book. This is what happens to me. So you have these skeletons, you see them in the museum, they're impossibly cute. It's ridiculous. And then what happened next?
Oh, I drew some pictures and actually pulled a picture. Again, it's all laminated. I take these on my school visits, but I drew pictures of him. So I drew these, and it was with scratch boards. So it's this white clay that's coated with a layer of ink, and then I use a sharp knife and I scratch into it. That's why it gets that etching look. But it's not an actual like.
So hang on, we're going to slow it down because I'm a bit slow with the press. So you go white clay.
So it's this smooth white clay surface,
like a flat.
Yep, and then I paint it with a layer of just black ink.
Black ink.
Let it dry. And then it's a really soft clay. And so you use a sharp, like an X-Acto blade, a craft knife.
Yep.
And I just scratch right into it. And you scratch away the black and the white shows underneath. It's like drawing with a white pencil on black paper.
Yeah. We get some of those, those kids craft things where they have like a black thing and you scratch off and they put rainbow underneath and things.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's the same thing.
But you make it so you can...
Well, I buy it pre-made. But I put the black on myself, but I buy the clay boards. Yeah.
Yeah. But you put the black on and then you scratch. So how did you get the green?
I painted with watercolor paint on top because the ink is waterproof. If you use the right ink, it's waterproof. And so then you can paint the color paint on top. They're
amazing. And so then that is it. How do you get that onto a flat piece of paper? Then do you photograph it or print it?
I just scan it.
You scan it like on the old scanner bed sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just a really thin. I have them behind me. I could reach and grab one. They're on a thin masonite board.
So that's clay. Board.
This is if you look at it really closely, it's a board. It's like a masonite thin, really thin, like you could buy at Bunnings. And then it's coated with something called kaolin clay. And it's a clay that I think is actually from Australia, but it's doesn't require being fired in a kiln, but it will still dry hard. And so they coat a really super thin layer on top of the board of this white.
Yeah.
Then I take the black ink and I can paint either the entire thing black and then scratch, or with the magpie, I wanted him on a white background. So I just painted the black where I wanted it.
So had you scratched first and then black? Or okay, so you painted the shape of the magpie black and then you scratch in all the texture and the...
That's right.
And the white is exposed.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I love it.
It's a great medium. I love it. And I've been able to, because the first couple books I did like the picture books, I did them on Scratchboard and then had them all scanned. And it cost a small fortune just having this. They're so heavy. And I had this box full of them that we had to send, I had to send them to the scanner and then have it, it was so precious at the time. I had to have it insured. And then I now have this big box out of my garage full of these boards. And so what I've done is figured out how to make it look the same using Photoshop, like digitally. So I digitally scratchboard a lot of the books I do now.
So do you, in terms of, you don't do that physical process, but how do you draw?
Well, I'll still draw it on just like paper, like
Photoshop.
I would with on the clay. But on the computer, what I'll do is I'll start with a white background, and then I will make a layer of black, and I'll paint the black where I want it. And then I can set the pen tool, my little drawing tool, to any kind of brush I want, like a watercolor brush or a sharp brush, and I'll make it into what I've kind of mimicked a really sharp knife tool. And I can scratch into that black.
Physically, it's the same experience for you.
Oh, wow. It's amazing. Yeah. And it just took a matter of me like starting an art piece and then scanning it and then bringing it up in the computer and then trying to replicate it digitally so I could make it look the same for each stage. So that way I knew when it was all done, it looked the same, because I was worried about especially the first couple books I did digitally. I think I just didn't want them to look digitally. Now I don't. Now I understand when I want something to look a certain way, but back then I was a little worried that it was just as obvious I was doing something new. But yeah,
because they all look hand drawn. They all look, all the illustrations, and all regardless of size. Were you with the big sugar glider? Is it?
Oh well, that one was. Well, that one might have been done Scratchboard, and then I blew it up. Yeah.
Well, they all look.
Well, I still sit there and every single fur bit, I'm like, like there's no program that does all that random fur for me.
It wouldn't look random, no.
No, so I still get the same repetitive stress whether I'm on the computer or the clay. It's just a matter of it's really messy when you're etching into the clay. So it does make my studio really, everything will just get a layer of dust and dirt. And it's ink and clay, and it's probably not meant to be breathed in. So I don't know. They don't have any warnings with it, and I just don't know.
Well,
it's one of those things.
When you're doing so much of it, like if you did a little bit, a little fine. But if you're doing it for your whole, all the time, you start to worry about the health impact of that.
And the clean. Really, for me, it's more I'm worried about the mess. And so it is nice not to have that layer of mess everywhere if I'm doing it. But like for the magpie, for those, like if I'm wanting to create like an art piece and not something for a book, and I want a final product, and I still do it the old fashioned.
Are they expensive, the boards with the clay?
They're not cheap, but because you can get them on like for student grade, like for kids, and for if you're starting out, you can get them on just cardstock. So they make it, but without that rigid board. And it's not as nice. You get to the paper a lot quicker when you're scratching. They can't put as much clay on.
Lino is probably a better idea from heavy-handed.
Lino. Yeah, but lino, I always end up gouging my fingers when I do lino. Because those sharp tools, and you're like,
I know, I like them. I like it. Yeah, and I'm more used to using clay, like clay. I did a lot of pottery a long time ago, and the mess is hilarious. But I don't mind. But at the time, I didn't have kids. I did it without them, so it was my own mess. Didn't really matter. But now there's no room. There's just no room.
It takes. I got into ceramics for a little while, and I was doing little ceramic sculptures, little animal sculptures. And I still love it, and I really miss it. But I just couldn't find a space to work. It was too messy. You shouldn't do it inside for all the dust. Because clay itself is so dusty and
so do you would you have for sculpture, are you the
As
clay's
etching.
dry for that.
Yeah.
That's the etching version. Okay.
Oh, I do have one.
Mine was always wet, so I was like,
Well, I would work with it wet, and I would let it get to kind of that leather hard, and then I would put underglaze on it, and then I would etch into that.
Wow.
I've got one, so I don't know if you can see it from there. Let me grab it here. It's all etched
beautiful.
in there. I loved this. I just need to figure out how I can do it in a non-toxic
that's beautiful.
in kind of a way that's healthy for my family and myself. So I've got some other clays I'm going to start playing around with, but that black underglaze in particular is really bad. So you have to catch it. You can't just sit out in the back garden and do it. You need to catch it. And then it was always like, what do I do with it now? It's a heavy, I think it's got some heavy metals in it, and just was a whole lot of reasons. Anything I have to wear gloves to do, I kind of question whether should I really be doing this?
Yeah, my daughter likes those, you know, where you get like a dinosaur egg and then you attack at it until you find like the most piddly little thing in the middle after hours. And
hours and
the
hours.
dust that comes off that, it makes us go, like, it'll make me go red. It'll make her face go red if she, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's breathing it in. And then she gets bored, so I just stick it in under the tap and start whacking. I'm like, what are we doing? But I don't know how that's safe, and they sell them for kids. And I buy them, which is
it's only like a one-off. Probably she's not doing it every day, exposed to it every day. And
if it's school holidays, she'll want one all like every week, you know, just have another go. But we're a bit like that.
I think that's fine.
At one point I had the vacuum, the little handy vac right next to her, and I would just constantly go, I'll get the spray and just spray it so at least it's settled.
Yeah, settled down. Yep. Yeah. My son took his out in the back garden. He got so frustrated. He's no patience. He's a bit like me. And he started it, and he was really enthusiastic, and he was like, this is ridiculous. It's taking me more than 5 minutes. So he's like outside throwing it against the concrete, trying to break it off. As a last, we only did it once because of that.
Oh, I don't like them. Okay, so you have your illustrations. You've started your drawings, and then how? I know. No, I'm doing very well. I will. No, it's my fault. I get all interested in the details. Okay.
So do I.
So.
Okay, so I had those drawings, and I had at that time, or probably after that, I'd written my first picture book. And so I had this idea of taking this character, the skeleton character, into a picture book. And I wrote this, and I have it here. I wrote this picture book. And I always show this when I talk to kids at schools about how when you can have a good idea, but you've done it wrong. And I wanted to have this frogmouth skeleton in a wordless picture book, mostly like a really dark book, because I thought little preschooler children who couldn't read would really enjoy being able to read a book to themselves. But my character was this, was a skeleton in a museum. Like, he was pretty, there's especially a couple in here where he looks a wee bit scary, and but I like to say to kids, it's okay to have you might have a good idea, but just in the wrong time, in the wrong place, so
some kids like the scary thing. I personally would be scared, but I like, I like some of them, but I think on first look, I'd be like, it's very scary. More you look at it, the less scary.
It is. I mean, it's not a scary book, but it was just kind of a fun character, but in the wrong story. Wrong place, and he's just wandering around the museum. There's really no story. He's just wandering around the museum. He's bored, and so he's found this bird, and he just is playing in the Queensland Museum, really,
under his arms.
And then, but later I figured out he, I kind of realized that he had a funny personality, and he needed to be in a book for older kids.
Yeah, and then we get.
Well, and I tried a lot of different things. I think when I first started approaching this idea of a graphic novel, I got a lot of kind of feedback that I wanted to do it full color, and people were like, no, especially in Australia, no way, it's too expensive to do these full color. You think how expensive a picture book is, and I was proposing, I think at the time, either 64 pages or some one of those, quite a long book, full color. And there was a lot of hesitation. It was too weird, it was too expensive, too risky. And I think and probably a lot of that was, I had an agent in America, and she was kind of sending that around as a full color graphic novel. And so I just kind of pulled it back in and thought about it. And I've always clung to this story. Like I've been hanging on to like, I would not let it go. You know, sometimes you're like, I should let it go and move on. I would not let this go. And so I kept just trying different things. I tried at one point trying to write it like an illustrated novel where I had the words and then there were just little, a few spot pictures, and it really needed more pictures. And so I came back to the graphic novel, and I don't remember what the reasoning was, but someone told me it was too expensive to do a color graphic novel. So I thought, I'm going to try black and white and see what happens. And that was right when Aaron Blabey started coming out with his gorgeous bad guys. And that really worked. And that worked in black and white. And so I thought, I'll try it and see if I can, make that work. And I think I really work well in black and white. I think if I had to full color that thing, I would be
seeing a trend.
Yeah, I would be lost. I would have been like, I don't know which color to put here. I feel really comfortable doing black and white. And so, it just seemed to work. And I got really lucky with Alan and Unwin, and
they're lovely.
They're so good. I know.
I would say.
Yes.
And so, but the actual, in terms of mysteries and Sherlock Holmes and all that, are you a mystery fan? How did that part come in?
I do. I love mysteries. And when I was little, I don't know, I'm probably a bit older than you, but have you ever heard of the Trixie Belden books?
No.
You liked mysteries as a kid. They were, I reckon.
I didn't read many mysteries. My daughter does. She's a Nancy Drew fan.
Okay. So it was like in the Nancy Drew, and Trixie Belden was just one of those. I read the Nancy Drews, the Trixie Beldens. There was a Meg something ones I read. I used to read all kinds of mysteries. And I had this one that the mystery would show, like the main character was an artist. And what he would do is he would go to these scenes and then he would draw a picture of this scene and be like, he uses that to figure out what's out of place. And so as the reader, you would look at these pictures and try to figure out and the one I remember it was pictures in a stable, in a barn. And there was all this dry hay everywhere. And he drew in these two candlesticks. And that was when you looked at the photo, you realized, you'd never have candlesticks in a barn. And that was where the secret entrance was. And, you turn the
I keep thinking I've got to write this down, but it's okay because I can listen back. Because they sound amazing. I think
they were brilliant. That was something called Hawkeye. And I've never heard of it since. I don't know if that was the only one. But I loved mysteries. Yeah. And the Trixie Beldens were particularly my favorite. She was, just this nice, wholesome girl. And she was solving all these crimes. And, she had this best friend who was super rich and had horses, but her friend was really nice and kind, like she wasn't like that kind of typical nasty rich girl that you often have in the books, of dealing with her friend having more than her, but in a kind way, like in a understanding I loved them. I read tons of mysteries and I still like mysteries. I love a good mystery and I really enjoy reading books where I can't quite figure out what's going on, until the end, like when it all starts to come together. And
I watch a lot of like Scandi Noir and stuff like that. And my mum is a massive Agatha Christie fan. And then my kids, I don't know, it skipped me by the reading of the mysteries. I don't know why. And it's not because I read them and didn't like them. I just haven't really tried because my work would take me in other ways for books and that kind of thing. But I love watching them. I'm the irritating one who has to guess it before everyone else.
Oh, I do too. Well, I'm always looking. Now, when you write them too, I think you start to know where they're pointing things out that they kind of want you to be aware of, but they're trying to be subtle. And so I'm always like, I bet that's important. I bet that guy who just came in, there's a reason why he came in and said that. That's
And it's like, well, we're up to this point, and if we haven't met them yet, they didn't do it. But then now they've started to mess with that a little bit in the series, which is a bit annoying because then I'll be like, no, you just wrote them in at the end and that can't work. You should have had them come across. Anyway,
No, I get mad when I read a book and the thing at the end, you couldn't have guessed. There's no clues that led up to it. It was like some phenomenon some supernatural thing that you couldn't have predicted. And I'm like, that's not fair. That's cheating.
No, and you don't get that buzz of thinking you're the one who solved it. So you wrote mysteries for, and what age were you aiming at? So when you were thinking in your head how complicated the story needed to be, your ideal reader, how old would they have been?
I'm looking at a child who's independently reading, but possibly a little ready for a little bit more than just the bad guys. I think when I started thinking about what I wanted to put out there, and my son was at that age where he was just starting to devour those bad guys. So I'd spend however much money on one and he'd be like, in a half an hour, I'm done. It's like, oh. Okay. They read them over and over and over again. He still reads them. I mean, he's 10 now and he still will pick them up and read them for comfort. Like they're comfort books. But I wanted something that had a little bit more, like I wanted a couple hours. Like I wanted him, someone his age to read it and still be interested, put it down, but then want to come back. And that's
the multiple read. Multiple sittings.
Multiple sittings and that getting that confidence too of reading a chapter book. It has lots of chapters. It's thick. So, it does look like, especially if you have a kid who doesn't they're a little bit reluctant and they don't want to read a book or they get put off by a lot of words, then they can still read this nice thick book, but it's all pictures, so it's, there's still words. So, there's still plenty of words, but they have to read the pictures too. They can't just read the words and they can't just read the pictures. Otherwise you try to just do one in the story, it doesn't work. And so I was aiming for that kind of the age group where they just wanted a little bit more, but still keeping it really approachable. My son is he's a tough guy. Sometimes I call him a reluctant reader, but he's not. He loves to read, but he likes to read easy reads. And so if you give him a book that looks a little bit challenging, he'll just look at it and be like, I don't want to read that. Just all words.
They get a bit daunted by them sometimes, don't they?
Yeah.
And
that's not, I think with illustrations, I do too. And but I was just aiming for that age group that maybe wanted a little bit more, but not necessarily ready for, pages of paragraphs. That's the first one.
She's going to love it.
And that one is basically very similar to the Queensland Museum and the Melbourne Museum. But that one came out last year, and then the new one, and we had a little bit of a lag, maybe a year and a half between the books.
But that's great. To have a second one come out is great, because then you've got kids love that. If they fall in love with one, they always want another one, to just, and my kids love series and things like that because they feel safe reading them. They know what's going to happen. And I
like series too, though. I mean, I totally gravitate towards a series. If you tell me there's more than one in the book, I'll give it a go.
I know. That's great. Is there a view for a third?
I have a third one written, like the dialogue written, but we wait. I think that there is always, especially the way things are going right now with the world, the publishers want to wait and see how this one is, how it comes out, how well it does before they're ready to commit to a third one. But I'm ready. I mean, I'm like, let's do it. I've already got the idea. I actually have it completely scripted and ready to start kind of thumbnails and drawing out the sketches, which, it takes ages, but it's a good school holidays activity because I can take my notebook and my printout of the dialogue with me and sit at, the trampoline park. I don't think any of these places can be open, but, sit at the skate park anyway. And while my son just skates for hours, I can just sit there and do sketches.
Are there any animals you wouldn't draw? Like that you don't, I know you like the Australian animals, but are there any that are just too gross?
No, I like animals. I really do. And I have a science back. My undergraduate degree is in biology. And then I have a master's in environmental science, which was a focus on ecology. So my master's research was on fire ants.
Oh, really? My kids love fire ants. They watch there's a YouTuber.
Oh, yeah.
Now, here we go. There's a YouTuber who has fire ants, and it's this massive, it's hours and hours they've spent. He's got over 1 million subscribers. Like he's massive. And you watch him we keep ants, although we don't right now because we let them all out, but only not a fire ant. Sorry. No fire ants. No. We had crazy black ants and some ghost black and things and some honey ants and things. But so the kids love ants. And so they watch this guy. He's in Indonesia, I think. Singapore, I can't remember. Anyway, he's Canadian though, and he has this amazing YouTube channel with the fire ant colony.
Wow.
It sounds really bizarre, but he just has this way of speaking and he makes everything sound so dramatic, and you watch and he monitors their behavior all the time. Like he'll experiment, what if I give them this to eat, how will they behave? Not in a mean way, just in what's their favorite. Like one time he got all different colors of pots of the sort of fakeish food they can feed them. It's like that honey sort of stuff, whatever it is, sugar, syrupy stuff. and he made them all different colours and then would test to see which one they preferred, to see if they like. I mean, he's just a dude doing his thing. But
that was essentially my undergraduate research, or my master's research, is we set up little stations, because where I was in South Carolina in the States at the time where I did my degree, and it was just this big empty paddock, and there was a fire ants, because we had a definite fire ant problem in the US, invasives. And we would set up little cages that only the ants could get into. And then we would have these little like Brillo pads, like those SOS, those scrubby pads. And we would place a certain number of different species of seeds on each one. And then you would come back and collect them, a couple days later, and see which ones they didn't take. And then so we could try to figure out if they had a preference. And then try to figure out if the preference was on size, or if it was, like trying to figure out if we could figure out why they ate some things over others. Mm-hmm.
That's so exciting.
But the bizarre thing, it really wasn't exciting. It sounds exciting. It was not. It was a lot of slugging around. I got bit by a lot of fire ants. But what was really cool was that they would have these little caches where they had been discarding, like if they were eating centipedes or millipedes. I don't know what they were, little things. But they would leave their exoskeletons all in a pile outside of their mound. So they obviously would eat them, and then they would make this little pile of skeletons.
They do normally have a rubbish area where they put all the dead ants.
Yeah. Well, so maybe there were dead ants in there too.
And they put, or they might go in a different area.
Yeah. It was really interesting. I mean, like, it was interesting. I saw a lot of cool stuff, but it was a lot of just...
It's slow.
It was hot, and it was working with these wire cages and getting bit by ants. And then I'd still have to go back in the lab and get out the microscopes and try to figure out counting how many seeds and sorting seeds that were left over. And,
my son even plays a game called Undergrowth, I think. And you have an ant colony. You start with a queen and a certain number of workers, and it's really sort of, I don't know. And then you have to like decide how many workers you want, and how many defenders. You have to go and find food before these things will come and invade your home. But it's sort of all done from the top down, and you're watching and monitoring this colony. He loves that, and he knows so much because it's based on real species and how they behave, and so he knows just silly amounts about ants. We all do now.
I know, because
he'll put it up on the TV, and then my daughter will watch it, and so she watches. She calls it James TV, so he'll put up his game and she watches it. So instead of a YouTuber, instead of Ants Canada up there, it'll be James plays it, and then she'll be there and she's going, "But the coach horses are coming, and then they don't watch out for the spider," and it's hilarious.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll have to look
It's a fascinating answer. And we had, because she can catch queens like no one else. She's amazing at catching queens. Yeah. So I'm like the person who walks around with test tubes in her pocket with little water reservoirs in them, the cotton. We always have a test tube, because she'll just be like, "Oh, there's a queen." And okay. And they always want it to be a fire ant, because they think that would be so dramatic and you could report it. And we've been to the museum
or something, right?
They
used to. When I lived in Queensland, they paid you if you found a colony, because they would come and eradicate it. That was a long time ago. I don't know if they still do that.
Oh, it's heartbreaking when I have to tell them, no, that's not a fire ant. It's just a really boring ant. So, but yeah, and then you can watch them lay their eggs and have all their little babies, and so they'll end up with like 30 little ants ready to put into the formicarium thing and stuff. That's when it starts to not work for us, though. So we tend to let them out if it looks like they're not going to work. We haven't quite got the fully functioning colony yet, past that stage. But at least they're local ants, so we can just let them out.
Yeah. And are they in your house, like the ants, or are they out on the deck or something?
No, they all have them in the bedrooms, and they can't get past olive oil. So they did all these tests. We saw it on a Mythbusters or something. And if you wipe oil around the edge, as long as it's longer than the body of the ant, they actually can't pass oil, because it upsets their little antenna.
Right? And when it
just gets stuck on them, and then they spend so long cleaning it and they give up. And so for every barrier we've ever had, even cling film, top, all of that, the best thing is just olive oil. So we could actually just have them, you could have them out on the table. If you wipe olive oil around them, they can't leave.
That is bizarre. That's me, because my son wanted one, and we did have we were never able to actually get ants to fill his little ant farm that he had. But I was always terrified that I was gonna wake up one day and they were gonna be all over the house.
Those are hard. We have a couple of those. But again, I would just put oil all around them because I didn't know what was going to happen. But you have to have the queen, and you have to let the queen breed up inside the test tube first because they're exhausted. Oh, I know too. They get their food from the wings that drop off, and then they have to have just that cotton. But yeah, if you ever need to know, I could. And then you get and then once they've got, they need like 20 workers in there before you can put them into a bigger home, so that there are enough to keep her fed and build any structures they need and everything. It's fascinating.
It is fascinating. You should work at the museum. You could be their ant curator.
Oh no. They all thought even the museum thought we were a bit weird because we wanted to know if they had any like on display, like like in the
such a good display.
But they don't. They had a book.
We have ants at the Melbourne Museum.
Oh.
But I think they might be bull ants, and they might be the kind where, when you get to go underneath I love museums. You get to go underneath the table and then poke your head up into that like clear glass and look around, and then the ants are along the ground.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. But I don't think they have the subcolumn, like how, and I know I've seen them before. We have like the glass, like the gas case, and they just build their, but I don't know if I can't remember that, but I know they do have the little ant one where you can poke your head up and look around and stuff.
Oh, and they're alive?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Not dead ones.
Yeah.
We were even after just the ones like pinned, the horrible kind of taxonomic style.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. They didn't have that either. And yes, they thought we were slightly strange.
Oh, I'm surprised. I would have thought they would have been all over that. Well, they must, if it makes you feel better, they probably think I'm really weird because I've come in several times just for those frogmouth skeletons and, taking photos and asking if I can see them when they're like asking when they weren't on display and having someone track them down for me, calling all these people so I could go and see them.
Oh, that's
they were very,
so
I did
good.
have the book as an excuse. I was like, I have this book with this character from your museum, but I'm sure they thought I was a bit of a weirdo, and that's okay. Be weird is good.
Weirdos. That's great. That's great. We're not always allowed to go to the museum because I'll spend too long looking at the minerals. But there we go. We're autistic. We're allowed to do that.
Yeah. We have a great mineral display, gemstone and minerals display at the Melbourne Museum as well.
They're fascinating. Yeah. But I just want to stare at the pages. I'm not very good at like knowing things about them. I know more about ants, but that's because of the kids. But thank you so much for coming on Oz Chat.
Thank you for having me.
We have to wave, and it's really naff. You'll love it. Thank you so much.
Oh, Bye. Thank you for having me. Bye. Take care.